Evening and welcome to the Canby Urban Renewal Agency special meeting for April 21st, 2021. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order here at 5:35 p.m. First thing on our agenda is citizen input and community announcements. And I don't know if we have anybody in council chambers I'm getting a head shake now, but we do have a letter that was sent in earlier today. And so I will go ahead and read that into the record. This comes from Chief Davis at the Canby Fire Department. He says, "It is my understanding that the Urban Renewal Agency is considering a refinancing for a lower interest rate. At the last URA meeting, there was some discussion around extending the date to terminate the URA from 2026 to a future date. The URA has done a great job providing the infrastructure in the industrial area for accommodating commercial growth. In August of 2015, the URA met with the Fire District Board representatives, which at that time it was our understanding to terminate the URA in the 2026-2027 fiscal year. Please, if at all possible, we would ask the URA to maintain the agreed upon termination date of 2026. The Fire District has worked hard with the prior city administrator and the URA to minimize the debt service with the understanding that the URA would terminate in 2026-2027. The Fire District agreed to a reduced amount in the original agreement. The Fire District has planned staffing needs for the future, which align with the plan to terminate the URA in 2026. As the Fire District continues to experience significant call volume increases and plans to staff the Northside Station, we have strategically planned for the over $450,000 lost every year to the URA, equivalent to 4 firefighter positions. To increase the URA debt would require the Fire Board to consider approving a junior taxing district. The Fire District will continue to be a great partner with the City of Canby, and we appreciate all of the cooperation." So that is the comments from Fire Chief Davis regarding that. Third on the agenda is the consent agenda, which is the minutes from the March 3rd, 2021 URA special meeting. If anybody wants to make a motion for that.
I move that we approve the minutes from the what was the date again? Sorry.
March 3rd, 2021.
2021 meeting.
I'll second that.
All right, so it has been moved by Commissioner Hensley and seconded by Vice Chair Hodson to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the March 3rd, 2021 URA special meeting. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous. So we will move on to item number 4, which is new business discussion regarding the facade improvement program. And I believe that we have our fearless leader there, Mr. Archer, to discuss this. You are muted, sir.
Okay, here we go. Good evening. Thank you, Chair Varwig and Urban Renewal Commissioners. This first item is a follow-up item, bringing back an update to you on the process regarding the facade grant program. You last discussed this on February 3rd at your meeting and asked that we do some additional work on this. So I'm going to call on Jamie Stickle, Economic Development Director, to provide you an update on where we're at on this process. Jamie?
Good evening, Jamie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Wonderful.
Good. As Scott mentioned, this conversation is a carryover from the February 3rd Urban Renewal Agency meeting. The topic was brought up at January 20th, and the concept was to streamline the process, to create a process for administrative approval for facade improvement applications that we've received. During the February 3rd meeting, there was some dialogue between commissioners, and then also a letter from Carol Palmer, who had previously been on the Heritage and Landmark Commission. Carol had voiced some concern that without the applications coming before the Urban Renewal Agency, that there wouldn't be public input, and that potentially decisions about historic buildings or that could interrupt a future historic site would be approved administratively without the ability for the public to comment. So at the end of February, Carol Palmer and Commissioner Bangs and I met. We discussed the process, how it's been done in the past, identified some ways that potentially could streamline it, some ways that we could make some of the decision administrative, and then also wanted to include the ability for there to be public input with the lens of historic preservation, but also if someone just says, by painting that building purple, it's unsightly. There might be some way for people to comment. So the three of us put our heads together and identified a plan that basically a completed application would be received by city staff. And when I say completed application, I mean that would include not just an application, but the pictures that are required of the building, the bids that are required for it to be brought before you. And once we have a completed application, the application and those supporting documents will be posted on the city's website. A link to that page would be forwarded to the design committee. And the design committee is a committee of citizens who are interested in knowing what's going on and provide input. They don't say yes or no. What they say is, I think that the color choice is going to be a great addition to our downtown, or something along those lines. So it would go to the design committee, and then it would be shared on the City of Canby Facebook page. Those links and the public input would be received for 10 days. And then here's where the project kind of splits. If there is no objection received, applications can be approved by the city administrator. If objections or an objection is received, an Urban Renewal Agency meeting will be scheduled, and then it will become before the commission to approve or deny that application. In the meantime, city staff would report any administrative approvals at Urban Renewal Agency meetings. And then additionally, the City of Canby staff would work to promote the design committee. And just as a matter of practice, that is something that we've actually already started doing. So at the March Heritage and Landmark Commission, Calvin, who is the staff person, talked to that committee about the design committee. It really is what amounts to sometimes 3 emails a year saying, here is what the application says, here's what's requested, do you have any comments? I asked Calvin after our February 3rd meeting, and he had said that we did receive 1 additional member in the last year or so. And then actually Carol Palmer also joined. So we've received two new members in the last year. And I think the more that the design committee gets promoted, whether that's with an administrative process or just if we keep things the way that it is, we'll see more people join that committee. So I have also included a draft resolution for creating that administrative approval, which really outlines what I've said as those points of just that that a city administrator, or in this case, I guess it would be urban renewal director, which are the same position, he can approve it. And that if there is objection or if there is anything else, then it would come before the Urban Renewal Agency.
Great, thank you, Jamie. Any questions? Vice Chair Hodson.
Yes, Jamie, thank you for this. Appreciate the work on this and moving this forward. Regarding the design committee, how many people are on the design committee currently?
I believe there are 6 on there currently.
And then how many attend on a regular basis when they review the facade pieces?
It's not a meeting. We were hosting meetings, but they were pretty short meetings. And so it turned into an email where the staff person, it used to be myself, now is Calvin, would email the design committee and say, this is the application that we received. So typically, as I would say in the last, taking this past year out of, we've heard from 2, maybe 3 people. I anticipate those 2 new members, I'll hear from them.
I'm sorry, it kind of broke up there. How does everyone need to respond in some way? What kind of input do you usually get on these reviews?
Sorry, just a bit. I think that you asked if everyone responds. We don't always hear from everybody. I would say typically we hear from about 50%, but I don't know what that looks like with the 2 new members. So I would anticipate that the reply would be greater with 2 new members because new people are typically, engaging more, whether it's or even, community members.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hensley, I see your hand up there.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, it concerns me that we have 6 people on the commission, and so basically 3 people are in the town are approving designs. Have we made any headway with my idea of making this a advisory committee to the URA, as we have advisory committees to the council where we have a term and they rotate in and out? Have we done anything with that?
Not officially. I know that Calvin has done some work on looking at what other cities have done. We are unique. Canby is unique in the sense that Main Street organizations are typically nonprofits. So there aren't very many, there aren't very many other cities that are even have the Main Street. So it would be more working with, I guess, Melissa to make it an official advisory, which is certainly something that I would be happy to look into. I think more that Commissioner Bangs and Carol Palmer and I were trying to bring back the process that would allow for administrative approval. And so that's what I have brought.
Great. Commissioner Bangs.
Thank you. So it's my understanding that it would be an administrative approval process and not sent to a different commission. Is that how we have it set up, Jamie? And secondly, you said you had a draft ordinance for us to, or draft resolution, but I didn't see that in our packet, and I'm not aware of where it is. And frankly, I'm not great at using my email. It's probably operator error, but if we could look at that, I think it would be easier to evaluate the merits of this proposal.
So I'll answer. Melissa's looking at the packet right now. I do believe it was in the packet. Was it? Yeah. Yeah. So it was in the packet as a draft resolution.
In the council packet or the URA?
The urban renewal packet.
Yeah, I didn't see it in the packet either, and I'm looking as well, and I don't see it.
It's on page 5 of the Urban Renewal Agency packet.
And then to answer your first question, the design committee does not approve or deny. They, they review and they provide input. So it would be that if someone says, it's a pretty historic building, but it's, let's say, not on our local landmarks list, and someone wants to do something that's really outside of the historic integrity of the building, they might offer some insight on, instead of picking, this paint color, this one would be more suited to that building. So it's really that they're providing, it's a citizen input, not approving or denying. The people who would be approving and denying, if it went to any board, would still be the Urban Renewal Agency.
So, Vice Chair Hodson, you mentioned page 5. I'm looking at it. I see the staff report, but I don't see the draft proposal or the draft resolution.
So it should.
Oh, I see the draft resolution. I'm sorry. There it is. There is a draft resolution in page 7 of the report following the staff report.
Resolution number hashtag.
Commissioner Banks?
Thank you. I just want to reiterate that my original hope and what I continue to hope is twofold, that we have a process of improving the turnaround time on these applications, but also that we don't make something that I believe could be an administrative task require us to have an urban renewal agency meeting every time we want to approve one of these facade applications. I'd like to point out that the urban renewal agency has, to my knowledge, never turned down one of these applications. And so what we've done here is we have addressed the concern that it would eliminate a public comment or a public objection possibility, which I believe this resolution does. Therefore, I move that we pass this resolution without a number, a resolution to ratify the facade improvement program approval process. I'm wondering, do I need to read that entire thing in order to make this a motion?
This is a work session. So it's just, we're reviewing it, reviewing what was discussed at the February 3rd meeting. It was discussed and determined that we would come back as a work session after Commissioner Banks, Carol Palmer, and myself sat down, and that we would present to you the information that we had pulled together and the process that we felt was best to address. It looks like, also there might be some additional things to address as far as getting an official advisory committee, and I could work with Melissa on that. And then it would be brought back to you for adoption at an urban renewal agency meeting. And that's why the resolution is just hashtags or number signs.
Yeah. So as of right now, it's just discussion. So there's no motion that can be made because we're not in a meeting about the resolution. I do have some comments that I'd like to make. First of all, I just want to express a little bit of frustration that as the chair of the URA, I was not included in that meeting with Commissioner Bangs and Carol Palmer. So let me just make that known, is that I think as the chair, I should have been involved in that meeting. I think great things probably came out of that meeting, and I'm looking forward to looking at this resolution a little bit deeper. But any future conversations about this, I would appreciate being involved in those conversations, please. And then, yeah, just as of right now, this is just a discussion time. So I believe that we will set another meeting where we would actually discuss the resolution and vote on that. So Vice Chair Hodson, you had a comment?
I do. A couple of comments. If we want to move forward and bring this forward as a full-on resolution, I guess that'll be the call. Here's my challenges with this piece is I think that by having these facade program in place and then having these come to the Urban Renewal Agency, I think it gives a much greater exposure to these projects as they are coming forward. I think it allows for a better public comment piece instead of 10 days on social media. To me, we don't take much social media comment in our normal urban renewal agency meetings or in our city council meetings. And I don't think that's a precedent that we want to set. Historically, I think the URA does a good job of reviewing these from visibility standpoints and for consistency. And I do worry about it taking away more of a public opportunity on these items. Commissioner Banks has not turned down a facade piece. And I discussion we're looking at approving grant a project, whether or not we should be doing that.
Vice Chair Hodson, you are cutting out really badly, so I'm not sure if that's a microphone issue on your end or if there's any other option.
If we all muted, it would be easier for us to hear him. I don't know if that's a factor or not, but I did want to hear his comment.
Just better. I'll have to maybe just have to switch laptops in a second. Mike, still working coming through. Okay.
Commissioner Hensley, you have a comment. Sorry, Vice Chair Hodson, it's having a hard time hearing you.
I have a hunch my comments are in the same vein as what Commissioner Hodson was saying. I'm not really sold on this idea yet. I think that it does actually take away the voice of the people because not everybody's on social media. Having the process of it being exposed through the design committee, which I think should be an advisory committee officially, which I won't let go of that yet. And also it going through the process of our meetings, it gives the people more chance to convey their concerns or appreciation for the project. And I find it irresponsible for us to try to skirt our responsibilities as elected officials and put it off onto staff. So as it sits right now, I am not for this motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Tibbles, do you have any comments at all? Commissioner Parker, anything from you?
I mean, I think I would just echo the points that were already made. And I think that ultimately, when as elected officials, you are held accountable by the people for your choices and your votes. And by offloading that is problematic when it becomes to our historical decisions in maintaining downtown. So I'm aligned in that vein with Commissioner Hensley.
Perfect. Thank you. Vice Chair Hudson, great to see you back here. Hopefully this works a little bit better. Do you want to continue your comments?
Is this better? Is that
Yes.
more audible? Okay.
Yes.
So it sounds like I'm circulating what may have already been said by Councilor Hensley and Tibbles while I was swapping laptops. I just think that we're in a situation with the program that there still continues to be a lot of visibility to those when we bring them before the Urban Renewal Agency. On the agenda, people can see that. I think when we're looking at public comment via social media, we don't do that on normal agency items, and we don't do that necessarily in the city council. I think that could be a precedent to get into and start using that as our collection device. And I think just continuing with where we're at, it still allows for public input and our oversight and continuity of the program.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I do agree with you guys that it's a great thing to be able to see this and for the public to be able to have input on it. And so while I do appreciate the opportunity to have these discussions and talk about it, I think that we should continue. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Tibbles.
Yeah, I just want to add, actually, so it's not just a hit, completely shooting it down. I think the heart behind it is expediting and empowering the individuals that are part of these individual committees and staff. And to that, I want to applaud it. I think that the intentions behind it are good, but I think that, like I said, just echoing my previous points, is it comes down to accountability of elected individuals versus decisions without as much transparency to the people as possible. So I just don't think it achieves everything we were trying to achieve. While I think it was well-natured and trying to solve the problems we brought on the last meeting. So I just wanted to add that, so it wasn't just this idea doesn't work for me. There were good things behind it, I think.
Yeah, and like I was saying, I mean, Commissioner Banks.
Yeah, a few things. First, it doesn't seem to make sense to move forward with a draft resolution for this. I can count to 4 as well as anyone here. Secondly, I just want to say to the chairman, Barwig, it was certainly not our intention to exclude you from the meeting that Jamie and Carol Palmer and I had. We did announce that we would be doing that when we discussed this issue last. And so I just didn't realize that you had any interest in participating or anyone else. Thirdly, I would like to point out or reiterate, the commission, this was researched when we were talking about it, has never rejected this nor fielded opposition from anybody. And so the way I looked at this was an opportunity for us to allow our administrators to administrate or execute. But I can see the writing on the wall. There's 4 people who are opposed to this. And so there would be little point in discussing it further.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I appreciate the spirit behind it, and thank you for that comment about not intentionally excluding. I didn't think that was the case. I just wanted to make sure that if there's any future discussion about it or in future meetings that I was involved in those as well as the chair. So I don't think there was any malice or ill intent on that. So please don't misunderstand me there. I think that having had these conversations, I think we're at the point of continuing on the track that we have been on in the past and bringing any of these future discussions regarding the facade improvement before the URA instead of administrative decisions. So I think we can probably take that off of your plate, Jamie and Scott, and just continue how we've been doing it before.
Great. And I do want to say that in my nearly 9 years of being here, I think we've only really had one time where the process has gotten clogged up. So just from the standpoint of being a municipality that serves our citizens and serves our businesses, it's not something that is happening often where it's a long queue of waiting to be able to get these funds to start a project. This was this idea on how we can better serve, I think came from from someone having to wait a little bit longer, and we were as city staff in touch with them, but that that's not a common practice. So I think that the Urban Renewal Agency has done a great job of being available for meetings, whether that's early at 5:30 or even late after city council meetings. So we'll continue the way that we have, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate it. And thank you, Commissioner Banks, for having brought this up and put this in front of us to begin with. So I do think it was great to have the discussion, and it goes where it goes, and it was not for naught. So second on new business is going to be item number B, discussion regarding the refinancing of the urban renewal debt.
Thank you, Chair Varwig. Again, just to kind of start from the beginning here with this. This is just a discussion item this evening. We don't intend to ask you for any formal action, although a sense of direction is something we're looking to try to get this evening. So in the course of our regular work, we have realized the opportunity for bringing forward some substantial savings opportunities with the urban renewal debt. And that's what we want to present to you this evening. So please understand that, again, we're just presenting this as information, and perhaps if you're so inclined to give us some direction, if you choose to want us to pursue this, then we will take that at a future meeting and bring it back to you. But what I'd like to do is ask for Finance Director Julie Blums to give you a staff report on this opportunity and walk through that. And I also want to note that we have a guest that is on Zoom. I think we'll be bringing him onto the Zoom screen here, and that is John Peterson of Piper Sandler. They are a financial company. Basically, they are a bonding consultant that we are working with in this opportunity. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Blums and let her walk through that, and then we'll, of course, look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Julie, how are you tonight?
Good evening. I'm wonderful. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you.
I think we're getting our consultants brought on the screen here. So this is something that came up because interest rates are very, very low right now. And we, started looking at cost savings and the ability to shut down the district early, as Chief Davis had requested us to do. So I've been working with John, and we have come up with several different options for refinancing the 3 bonds that we have left. And all of them result in savings. So I want to just kind of go through this PowerPoint real quick and go through the different options with you. And then if you have questions, depending on how detailed, I will let John answer them. So I want to start with just the overview. Since we have a couple new commissioners, I want to go over what maximum indebtedness is. So when an urban renewal district is set up, a dollar amount is set as to the maximum that can be spent on all the projects, administrative costs, all of those sorts of things that is repaid by property taxes.
Julie, I don't mean to interrupt you right away, but I just want to make sure if you're progressing through slides, we are still on slide number 1 from our view. The overview slide.
Okay, I gotta have long arms. Sure, I can reach it. Thank you. I'm short. Okay, so when the Canby Urban Renewal District was formed, the maximum indebtedness that was set for the district was $51,149,000. So that's the maximum amount that the district can spend either by acquiring debt or cash paying for projects. And they are funded by property taxes.
We're still not seeing any other slides besides slide number 1.
Yeah. I haven't moved on yet.
Okay, I apologize. I thought you were talking about slide number 2 there. So my apologies.
Do you see this slide that says URA maximum indebtedness?
No, we do not. We see urban renewal debt refinancing options.
As I've learned from Chris, I think that we have to exit out of it and restart it.
Reshare, yeah.
Reshare it, because the first time it freezes there.
Now we see slide 1. We went to slide 3, now we're back to 1.
You see a new slide?
Still see slide number 1. Maximum indebtedness and debt overview.
All right.
I think we're there. Yay.
So the maximum indebtedness is $51,149,000. At the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, I am projecting that we will have about $4.4 million left in maximum indebtedness that can be used by the district for projects. You can use it, you don't have to use it, but it is available. The 3 bonds that we are looking at refinancing is our 2010 bond that paid for the First Avenue redevelopment, our 2011 bond that paid for our police facility, and our 2012 bond that paid for the library and civic building and the Sequoia Parkway improvements. The first 2 are out of their prepayment penalty phase, so there's no penalty to pay them off. The last one, the prepayment penalty phase ends a year from now in June of 22, but there is a way to get around that, and I will let John speak to that in a little bit so that we don't actually have to pay a penalty to refinance that one.
Is this the time when I'm supposed to talk?
Give me just a minute. There we go. Okay. Option 1. This is the option to just continue on the path that we have been on, where I have been prepaying on debt to get it paid off faster. Our total interest savings, if we stay on this path, is about $4 million. It would leave cash available of about $1.4 million that could be used against that maximum indebtedness amount. And the interest rates that we're paying on these bonds right now are between 3.25% and 7%. So that's option 1. Just stay the course we've been on. Option 2, this would be to do a straight refinancing. So just refinance all 3 bonds. We would keep them on a 5-year payoff period so the district could still end in 25-26. And the interest rate would be about 1.2%. What this also does is this allows us to cash fund if the commission or if the board wants to to use up the remaining maximum indebtedness as well over time. So you can see on the project work line, we would have to spread out when we do projects, just from a cash flow perspective, but it does give us the option to use all of it if you want to and still close the district by 25, 26. Option 3 is to refinance and pull out in cash the remaining maximum indebtedness. And there's 2 options for doing this. This option, number 3, is on a tax-exempt bond basis. Tax-exempt bonds are more favorable to people out on the market. But the caveat with that is that you would be required to use 85% of what we pull out within the first 3 years. So about $4.25 million within the first 3 years, you would be required to spend it. So that's the big caveat with this option is if we pull it out on a tax exempt basis, you have to spend that maximum indebtedness. And option 4 is basically the same as the last one, except they're taxable bonds and you don't have to spend the money that we pull out. You can, or you can just hold on to it and use it to pay back the debt. There is no requirement there. Okay. This is just a summary, a side-by-side of each of the options. This is how I look at things side by side. Jamie wanted pretty colors, so you got the other slides as well. But what I'm looking for tonight is just kind of some direction. Do you want me to keep working on this? If you do, what option do you want us to try to move forward with? We want to keep moving on this because interest rates are starting to go up a little. So we want to be able to lock this in at as low a rate as we possibly can. Here's some of the projects that are still outstanding. This was a question a couple meetings ago. What projects were still remaining on our list for urban renewal? And these are some of the projects that maximum indebtedness could be used for, if you so chose. And finally is staff recommendation. My recommendation is to go with option 2. I'm going to go back to the summary one so you can see what that is. It produces the highest amount of savings. It allows us to use the maximum indebtedness if you want. And it allows us to still pay off and close the district in 25, 26. That is why it is my recommendation. So I'm going to let Dawn talk about the prepayment penalty because I know that's been a question from several people. So I'm going to let him talk about that. Okay, John, you're on.
Thank you, Julie, and members of this is a board, correct? Not a council?
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's the board.
thank you, members of the board. And Julie's right. Interest rates are exceedingly low. They have actually been slightly lower than they are, but they're still very, very low. She was talking about the refinancing of the 2012 bonds. I think we've been referring to a prepayment penalty. In actual fact, the bonds are not eligible for prepayment until 2022. And so the way that you can refinance them now is actually by funding an escrow that will defease those bonds. In other words, take them off the agencies or the city's books, and that escrow would be funded with securities and cash to pay the interest and then pay off those bonds when they are eligible for prepayment, or pardon me, when they're eligible for prepayment in 2022. So there is some there's some cost associated with funding that with enough money also to pay the interest on the bonds, and it's, while not strictly a penalty, it's just there's some economic cost to not being able to pay it off immediately, but it allows you to be completely quit or out of the debt at the moment that you close.
The other thing I want to say is that the savings that I have represented on this slide, this is net of all fees, of every cost. So this is the true savings that we will end up seeing with any of these options.
Great. Thank you, Julie and John. Thank you for that presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Vice Chair Hodson.
Okay, can everyone hear me? I'm all right.
You are. You're great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So 2 questions. The first one for Julie. Looking at option 3 and 4, take the cash, does that still meet the 2026 close date?
It does. All of these options meet that date.
Okay. My second question is for our guest. What do we have any idea in terms of the anticipated escrow costs to us if we decide option 2?
Did you get that, John? You might be muted.
John, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you. I think you're muted, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can, yes.
So I was pressing the space bar while trying to look at another document, and apparently that if you're in another document, it does not unmute you. Anyway, yeah, I was just trying to pull up the document that would let me see how much the effective escrow cost was on the 2012 refinancing. And in fact, rather than temporarily unmuting myself, let me see if I can push a button that will let me stay. I'm unmuted right now?
You are.
You are.
Okay, great. Trying to pull that up. And let's see. So I'm sorry, it's taking me a moment to look through the document. Oh, there we are. So we call it an advance refunding on the Series 2012 bonds. That portion in particular brings net savings of just under $1 million. But the additional cost of funding the escrow, which is built in, I should say, that cost, the roughly $1 million net savings is net of that cost. So the savings from refinancing is actually greater than $1 million, but then because it costs you some to fund the escrow, it brings it down to closer to $1 million. And when we had run this set previously, it was about $122,000 of inefficiency to be able to refinance now rather than wait for a year from now. One of the advantages of putting it together with the other pieces that are eligible for what we call current refunding is the various paying for me as your underwriter, paying for the attorneys, paying for document preparation, all the other associated costs are combined across all of the pieces that you're refunding. So it reduces a lot of the cost of actually getting the refinancing done. In theory, if you were to wait a year and rates were still to be as low, then that $122,000 in, I guess what you could call carrying cost or dead cost in the escrow would be gone. And the question then is how much would rates need to increase for you to have also given away that $122,000 just by rates having gone up after a year?
Great, thank you.
Do we know that number, John? How much would have to go up to make up the difference between the cost of the?
I think I can find it. I'm looking for a page called Bond Summary Statistics, which, let's see, should be able to tell me. It's not hugely sensitive. I mean, you're talking about $10 million. And so $100,000 is 1%. In other words, if a year from now rates were 1% higher than they are, then you would be at a wash. And if they were more than 1% higher, you would have lost money by waiting. But that, I should say, that kind of hides the savings that you're getting from combining it with the other bond issues. In other words, I think by combining with the other bond issues, you're probably saving $50,000 or so in issuance costs. It might be more, but at any rate, so giving away that savings, you would need rates to rise by about 0.5% in order to come out even.
Thank you. Commissioner Spoon, did you have any other questions? I see your hand up there. Go for it.
Thank you. This might be a question for Scott, but I just want to make sure that, especially because we have some new commissioners, we're being clear. Julie, I know that it's just part of the way we're talking about it, but the language we're using makes it sound like it's a foregone conclusion that when the debt is paid off, the agency will close. Scott, can you speak to that? I mean, I know that there are still projects on our list, but it's not a foregone conclusion that the agency will close in 2026, correct?
I would say that's correct. You do have the option to consider whether to close it then or not. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that just because we have some new commissioners, that just because the debt's paid off doesn't mean the agency is closed. And we could pay it off and still do additional projects. We could pay it off and close it, but I just don't want people to think the assumption is that we'll pay it off and close the agency, because I don't think that we've agreed to that yet. So I just want to make sure our language is clear when we're talking about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions for Julie, for Scott, for John? Commissioner Bangs.
Thank you. And thank you, John and Judy, for your presentations. I think we could predict reasonably that there will be a rise in interest rates in the next year. The federal government is putting a lot of money into our economy, and people are returning to work, and those things tend to create inflationary situations. So I think it's a real easy call that we do the refinancing. I'm not real clear why option 2 is better than 3 or 4. I see that the savings are bigger, up to $100,000, $130,000 bigger. But do options 3 or 4 give us an increased flexibility over option 2? Like, why would anyone choose 3 or 4 instead of 2? Not that I'm leaning in any direction on 3 or 4.
The difference is with 3 and 4, if you wanted to spend that maximum indebtedness, you could spend it all immediately if you wanted to, because we will have the cash available to do it. With option 2, you can still spend it. It's just going to take time because we need the cash flow to be coming in from year to year. So it's just a timing of when you can spend it.
Then do we have, I saw briefly the list of projects that we have remaining unfunded. I don't know what the will of the Urban Renewal Agency is to approve these, or what they are really. Northwest 3rd from Grant to Elm, I don't really know what that means, nor what kind of dollar figures there are. Do we have a burning desire to spend it all in the next couple of years? I just don't know.
I could say no, but that's me.
Commissioner Spoon.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting, since we're not really making a decision tonight anyway, this is just informational. If staff could put some information together for what these projects on the list are and what an estimated cost is, because that is significant in my preference on whether or not, because if the interest rates are low and some of these projects have the will of the commission, I would rather get that money at the lower interest rate. But I can't really make that decision with the information that I have in front of me. I need a little bit more information to know if I want that cash to do those projects now or if I don't. And so I'm not sure how I could, I'm interested in refinancing. I just don't know if I want option 2, 3, or 4 with the information I have. And so I think for me, at least, I would rather have a little bit more information on estimated cost, what the project is, so that I can decide if I want the cash to do those at the lowest possible interest rate.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, it would be nice to know if we have staff capacity in order to handle those immediately if we were to do those all right away, or if we would need to do those over several years.
I think she said we have 3 years to spend the money, right?
Correct. But if we can't complete them all within, the 3 years, I guess the point I'm trying to make is option 2 might be better over the time, instead of, I know we have 3 years to spend it, but do we have the capacity to do it in 3 years, or do we need 4 years? I guess is what I'm saying.
And I guess along with that, like if we have staff capacity, like obviously we're not going to do every project. There's no way that amount of money can handle all of these projects, but how much we could do, right? In those 3 years. Yeah.
Vice Chair Hodson, you're first, and then on deck is Commissioner Parker.
I want to agree with Councilor Spoon. I would like to see some dollar figures on these projects here, so we can at least have that information to determine what we're looking at, right? So that would be great. The second point is it sounds like, for me, I think refinancing makes sense. The question is, do we go with cash on hand, or do we keep it where it needs to be gone through the process and bonded and all the holes that or loop hoops that we have to jump through for that aspect. So that's where I see where 3 and 4 are cash is in hand, liquidity versus it's still being locked up in our house, and we still need to then go back and do the process of taking a loan out against our house. So that's kind of how I see it. But I would like to see dollar amounts. I know that we talked about with the Walnut Street extension, which I think is what 99E access improvements are, that a portion of that is within the urban renewal district, that we can use those dollars to help at least that end of the street in the industrial park.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Parker.
Yeah, Brian went where I was going on that, and also to the extent that within the funds that are available to do the Walnut extension, if somehow these funds could be used to free those up. So that's more of a Scott question. And like Sarah said, Scott, if you could give us a spending plan, if you had access to $5 million at various times, what would and could you do? I know in talking to downtown businesses and walking around, the idea of pushing our renewal, it's began on First, now on Second, pushing that to Third Avenue, especially with the Oregon City Brewing and whatever sort of recommendations may come out of the park master plan for Waite Park, that might make sense to proceed. So, Scott, if you would put some numbers to paper and also give us your recommendations, that if you had $5 million to spend, what would you do it on? And also, if you could meet with Jim Davis, I I asked Sean if he could send us the letter. I'm just having to recall from hearing it the first time. It sounds like Chief Davis does not seem to understand this the same way these numbers are presented. So if we don't have to agree on what we're doing, but we do have to agree on facts. So Scott, if you would at least get together and make sure that Jim understands what these numbers are and what it means in terms of bringing our debt to a conclusion.
Can you hear me, commissioners? I'm off to the side. I don't want to shuffle in and out of the speaker spot. I think
Yes, we can hear you well.
Great. Yes, Commissioner Parker and Commission, we will quickly work on what you're asking. I think we're hearing interest in assembling that further information. We'll bring back hopefully at the next available meeting, because we want to capture the opportunity while the interest rates remain low and hopefully don't start climbing back up too soon. So we'll bring that information back. And then to your point also, Commissioner Parker, about getting with Chief Davis, I just want you to know I did speak with him today, and he was clear on what the discussion was tonight after my conversation. His letter, he wanted to submit that. He couldn't be here tonight, otherwise he would have spoken to it himself, but he was just wanting to make sure it was on the record. I think, again, that the fire district opposes the district extending beyond the anticipated 25-26 closure date. I don't think he was concerned about the refinancing portion of this, but I'll continue to be in contact with him, and we do converse about this. So thank you for that.
Well, okay, then he agrees with what we seem to be saying. And again, the other thing, and we ran into this 8 years ago, is to make sure that while we all work and like and respect Chief Davis, he is the chief administrative officer of an elected board. So we ran into this problem before, where the executive officer was ahead of the board, and the board had not actually taken a vote or a position on this. It sounds like he's stating a legacy position, at least in terms of ending the indebtedness. But in terms of specific things, I just wanted to have a caution here that as we advance new things, let's make sure that the responses that we get come from the elected board and not have this be just a reflection. It would be the same thing with you, Scott, of going and testifying in front of the Board of County Commissioners and expressing your opinion as if it was the city council.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, I'm just simply conveying what Chief Davis conveyed to me, just making sure you understood that. But yes, that's very much understood.
Great, thank you. And I have forwarded that email to you, Councilor Parker, and to all commissioners. So, all right. Any other discussion? Commissioner Bangs.
Thank you. It sounds like we have two issues that are not really closely related in extending the urban renewal beyond that closing date. Can we at least direct staff to ignore or like abandon option one for now? Like, no one wants to do that. Is that correct?
I think that they get the consensus from the discussion that nobody likes that option.
It was a good option until rates went down.
When rates went down, it changed. Yes. You've done wonderful, Julie. But yes, with rates as low as they are, it makes sense to look at options 2 through 4 and ignore option 1 moving forward.
Okay. I will work with Jerry. I do know he was actually excited when he saw this list. It was like, ooh, I'd love to do 3rd and 4th. So I know he has some ideas about what projects might be good projects from this list. So Scott and I will work with him to get some estimates put together and see what staffing capacity is for these projects. And we'll come back to you hopefully at the next meeting with that.
Perfect. And let's put 99E access improvements on the top of the list, because I think all of us want that.
I do know we have checked into this already a little bit. Because of the small section that is in the district now, the amount, without changing the boundaries of the district out there, the amount that would be eligible is quite small.
Got
for
it.
that line item.
And we are, this is Scott over here again. When we adjourn this meeting and go into our city council meeting later, you will be carrying with your city council hats an update on street funding and discussions about our capital plans, and the connection road is very much a part of that discussion. So you'll hear some updates on our funding plans and available funds for that as well.
Wonderful. Commissioner Parker.
Yeah, Julie, you went part of the way where I was headed, that we still have the capacity to expand the boundaries. And I'm wondering if we might be able to take a look at what we have left in our capacity to extend the boundary. And if we were strategically to do that at the Walnut extension, how much additional geography would get us? That's one. The second thing, and Brian, do you remember what the urban renewal concept was for Waite Park improvements that would somehow be above and beyond what we would do with the park development fee? Was this infrastructure or plumbing or what?
No, thanks for asking that question. One of the questions I wanted to pose to the group was maybe to have come back not only dollar amounts, but what these, even just a 30,000 foot level description of what these projects would do. I don't recall the Waite Park improvements that were included in the urban renewal plan. Yeah, I don't know if that was yet to be determined and it was just a wish list item. Something that's not on the list that I know that is in our boundary is Community Park, because that was also listed as an urban renewal area, but nothing's been necessarily planned for that. And so I know, again, historically, the conversation being, if we readjust the boundary, do we bring it in, take out Community Park area and tack that on to the Walnut Street piece, giving us maybe a bigger, broader brush to improve in there. But your question, Councilor Parker, I don't remember what included Waite Park improvements.
It could just be that at a moment in time, people recognize that we were going to need to do Waite Park improvements, but that's going to be a part of the park master plan. And again, if I had my option of stretching the rubber band between Community Park and Walnut, I would just strategically gerrymander that out so that we had access to spend these funds on the Walnut faster than not.
Great, thank you. All right, any additional questions, comments? I think maybe the next step, Julie and Scott, is I think we've given you guys quite a bit of work to bring back to us, and so maybe a work session on this would be a good idea for the next time we talk about this prior to coming to another URA meeting. With no future or no additional questions or comments looking like, I thank you so much, Julie, for your presentation, and thank you, John, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, John.
A pleasure.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you all.
Next on our list is adjournment, which we will be adjourning into an executive session. And I know that Gordon has requested a few minutes to switch over from this to that. And so I will just read our executive session notes here. Executive sessions are closed to the public. Representatives of the news media and designated staff may attend executive sessions. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No executive session may be held for the purpose of taking final action or making any final decision. So if we have to, we will come back into an open meeting. Vice Chair Hodson.
I guess then you probably need a motion to move into exec session.
Yes, we do need a motion to move into that.
So moved.
Do I have a second? I have a second. So it's been moved by Vice Chair Hodgson, seconded by Commissioner Spoon. Move into our executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Tracy, Commissioner Hensley? All right. So we will be over there in 5 minutes. We'll give Gordon a few minute break here. If anybody else needs a bio break, this is the time. So we will be back on in 5 minutes.
Just a reminder, there is